Hi guys, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Ryan Thomas. This is my YouTube channel, Mr. Rygar92. My last video that consisted, it was on the subject of the NFL, was about last week's NFL divisional round playoff games. This week, I'm going to do my NFC and AFC championship game predictions. The last round of the playoffs went pretty much as well as I thought it did. My predictions were pretty spot on. I picked Seattle to beat the Saints. I picked San Fran to beat Carolina. I picked New England to beat Indy. And I picked Denver to beat San Diego. And that is exactly what happened. And it was pretty easily that happened, which was more of a shock to me than anything. But I believe the best two teams in each conference are still alive in Seattle and San Fran and Denver and New England. And those two teams are very, very similar to one another, and that's what makes predicting how these games are going to go so tough. The fact that Seattle and San Fran are mere images of each other, with scrambling quarterbacks like mobile quarterbacks like Kaepernick and Russell going head-to-head, two stout run defenses and pass defenses in San Fran and Seattle, and two bullheaded coaches in Pete Carroll and Jim Harbaugh. And then on the other side of things, you got the veterans that are Peyton Manning and Tom Brady once again going up against each other. I can't tell you how excited I am for that matchup. You got veteran coaches, guys like Bill Belichick and John Fox. There's history there. John Fox playing against Bill Belichick in the Super Bowl when he represented the Carolina Panthers as their head coach, John Fox. And Bill Belichick representing New England still back then. There's history there, and there's history between Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. As everybody knows, the rivalry was the Patriots and the Colts. I think as soon as Peyton Manning was unveiled as the new Denver Broncos quarterback, that rivalry shifted. Wherever Peyton Manning was going to go, they were going to play each other in the regular season and in the playoffs again. No doubt about it. Guys like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning changed the culture of a franchise, and they changed the surrounding players on the team, and that's what we saw from Peyton Manning last year, and that's what we saw from him this year. He's had one of the most remarkable single seasons ever as a quarterback, breaking the passing touchdown record, 55 touchdowns or 57 touchdowns total, whatever it might be, but 55 in the regular season. Had never been done before. The previous record was held by the before-mentioned Tom Brady with 50, and that was back in 2007. So it took guys 6 years to complete the record, but the one guy that did it was Tom Brady's ultimate nemesis, you could say. Off the field, they're very good friends, but on the field, you know that they are enemies. Brady being 10-4 in matchups against Peyton Manning, that includes the postseason. This game is different than any other, though. This is the first playoff matchup that they've played against each other in quite some time, and I think that this matchup is one of the best because the season that New England has had, with the injuries that they had, and losing guys like Rob Gronkowski, losing Aaron Hernandez to a jail sentence, losing Wes Welker to the Denver Broncos, losing guys like Vince Wilfork, Gerard Mayo during the season to season-ending injuries. Brady was really able to have a remarkable season. And then Peyton Manning, with the offense that he has, guys like Decker, Wes Welker, who went to Denver, Demaryius Thomas, Julius Thomas, Noshawn Moreno coming out of nowhere once again, showing that he was what he was worth as a first-round pick coming out of Georgia, coming off the Georgia Bulldogs. You really find yourself wondering, could this be the last matchup that Peyton Manning and Tom Brady play against each other? It might be. And not only that, whoever wins this matchup and moves on to the Super Bowl, will they win the Super Bowl anyway? That's something that I'm really having a hard time. I always like to look into the future, and I'm having a hard time wondering whether if Peyton Manning wins or if Brady wins, will they even get by Seattle? Will they even get by San Francisco? Out of the four teams that are left in the playoffs, I would definitely make the argument that San Francisco is the most balanced team out of everybody that's left in the playoffs. passing-wise, running-wise, defensively, they are the most stout team all around. I think Seattle has the best secondary, but defensive line and linebacking, I think that San Fran's is the best, bar none. And that's what makes my predictions so tough. I'm going to start off with my predictions right now at the 5:20 mark. Let's start off first with the San Francisco 49ers traveling to Seattle, coming off a good win against the Carolina Panthers last week in Carolina to move on to the NFC Championship game. Seattle at home, though, winning that division, beating San Francisco once before in Seattle pretty handily and pretty easily, is what many consider to be the edge going into the game, going into Sunday's game. And I see it the same way. I see it as, Seattle is the advantage that they have at home is like none other that's left in the NFL. I think that the 12th man in Seattle is very powerful. I think that the running game, Marshawn Lynch, a former Buffalo Bill, I am a Buffalo Bills fan, born and raised, and it's very tough for me to see Marshawn Lynch running the way he has in a different uniform other than Buffalo's, but that's another story. And they're really the attitude that oozes out of Seattle is like a young college type team. The stadium atmosphere is like a college stadium. And Pete Carroll coming from USC to Seattle. And Pete Carroll had his moments as a head coach before he was at USC. We can't forget that. Being a coach of the Jets and the Patriots, but this time around with Seattle, given pretty much full control of the roster, Pete Carroll really took the reins of the Seahawks and owned that opportunity. And look where they are. I mean, each year they've been in contention, and you can tell each year they're getting closer and closer and closer. And this might be the year as far as the way that they have been able to play at home. But there are teams that come along and they play somebody once, they play somebody twice, and then they play somebody the third time, and they look completely different. The previous matchups don't matter, and they just look like they can do it. They can finally, muster up whatever skills that are inside themselves and pull away with it. And I have a feeling that is what San Fran could do. San Fran, as I mentioned earlier, and Seattle are in the same division, so San Fran has to play in Seattle once every year, and they're used to that. Out of any team in the NFL, I think that they're used to that, and they're used to being in Seattle and playing against them. And I think that is going to be an advantage, actually, for San Fran, and a disadvantage for Seattle. That these guys have played before in the same division and in the same in Seattle Stadium. I think that Russell Wilson is very cold right now. He played a not so decent game against the Saints this past week. Seattle had to rely heavily, I think too heavily, on Marshawn Lynch to take the reins of the offense over, and it was working against the Saints, but that won't fly against San Francisco. That will not work. San Francisco will force them to pass, will force Russell Wilson to pass. And in the previous two games in the regular season, no team has been able to shut down Marshawn Lynch except San Francisco. A bad game for Marshawn Lynch. The two worst games of his season were of 98 yards and 73 yards, both which were against San Francisco. And those are good games for any other running back, but not for Marshawn Lynch this year. And definitely, I think San Francisco is great on both sides of the ball. You have to remember that offensively, they did not have Michael Crabtree, and last year they did not have Anquan Bolden. And Anquan Bolden in the playoffs, he turns into a different type of receiver. Vernon Davis, definitely one of the best tight ends in the NFL. I don't care what anyone says about him being soft or anything like that. He's not. I think that he is definitely a top 5 tight end in the NFL. Frank Gore is just so durable. They just hammer him the ball, and he's 30 years old, and it's as if he's 25, and he looks great as a runner. And I think San Francisco will win this game. I think that they will beat Seattle at home. I know that it's crazy to say, given the fact that Seattle has that 12th man, but I think that San Francisco's wide receivers are better. I think that Kaepernick right now is playing better than Russell Wilson. I think that the tight end's better on San Francisco. San Francisco has a much better offense all around. And I think that their defense is more balanced than Seattle's. The one thing that Seattle really, really has that could be an Achilles heel to San Francisco is their secondary. And if their secondary can shut down San Francisco, then I would pick them. If I knew that going into the matchup, I would pick them. But I think that the fact that Kaepernick is a dual threat will be very tough for Seattle to handle. And I see San Francisco being able to beat Seattle. That's my first prediction. San Francisco over Seattle. I'm going to say 21 Seattle to 24 San Francisco. I'm going to say that Phil Dawson is going to kick the eventual game-winning field goal late in the fourth quarter. Russell Wilson will need to drive down the field, and there will be a turnover on downs or a missed field goal by Steven Hauschka, which would be a real shock because he's a dynamite kicker. But I don't think that'll happen. I think that Russell Wilson will turn the ball over on downs, and that'll win the game for San Fran. On the other side of it, this is the toughest prediction of all of throughout the whole postseason for me, throughout the whole playoff season for me. Denver versus New England. Denver is at home. We have Peyton Manning versus Brady XV or whatever it is, whatever they've been hyping it on TV. And yeah, it is Brady versus Manning 15. And I just, for whatever reason, I don't know why, whenever Peyton Manning plays against Tom Brady, he is not the same Peyton Manning that he is throughout the regular season and even in the previous week's playoff matchup. I don't know why that is. I do think that there is some sort of a pressure factor within that, and I do think Bill Belichick deserves more credit as to his game plans for Peyton Manning going up against him. I think that Bill Belichick is a defensive genius as far as putting guys in place that aren't the most flashy skill set wise, but he puts them in a particular role that he knows that they can excel in, and puts them in that role and lets them do what they can do. And that's what good coaches do. I think that New England has turned a new leaf as far as what they're capable on offense. They're usually not known as a running football team, but in last week's matchup against the Colts, Garrett Blount ran for 4 touchdowns. And Blount was a former running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was traded for nothing. They got him for little to nothing. They might have gotten him in the free agency. I'm not too sure. But that being said, Blount has been running great. He's been very healthy. He's still healthy. Julian Edelman has been able to replace Wes Welker pretty easily. Danny Amendola is still an option out there, receiving for Tom Brady. But those are really his only 2 options. And that is scary, but New England has just been able to really turn it around. And if Brady can, it all depends on the way Tom Brady plays more than anything. If Brady can play really well and New England's defense can once again shut down Peyton Manning, I can see New England winning it. But it is in Denver, and Denver does have one of the highest, most potent offenses in the NFL. But I can't ignore the fact that he, meaning Peyton Manning, has had as bad of a career as against Tom Brady as anyone versus any quarterback almost. That needs to be dealt with. That needs to be addressed. And I'm going to pick New England. I'm going with New England in Denver. I know it's nuts. In this prediction video, I'm basically saying that home field advantage means nothing by going with San Francisco over Seattle and New England over Denver, but I really don't think it means anything at this point in the playoffs. I mean, if you are San Francisco playing in Seattle for the second time, no one else has done that in the NFL. That's still remaining in the playoffs, obviously. So that's an advantage to them. They should not worry about that at all. If they can play really well, they can quiet that crowd. It depends on the start that they get off to. But I'm gonna say that it's gonna be San Fran and New England in the Super Bowl. I'm gonna pick San Francisco over New England to win the Super Bowl. More on that in my next video. Right now I have it San Francisco and New England in the Super Bowl. I have San Francisco beating Seattle, and I have New England beating Denver. If I'm wrong, I'll make a Super Bowl prediction video as to what I think who will win it and why they'll win it and all that. If the matchup isn't San Francisco and New England, either way I'll make one, and you guys can watch it and enjoy it. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and keep up with the comments. I haven't been getting as much comments as I'd like, but yeah, keep getting on and doing all that stuff. Thanks, guys.